Today is October 5th on a Wednesday. I am joined today with my brother from Loyola, Christopher O'Brien. Christopher, before we go any further with the show, I wanted to say thank you for joining me today for this podcast. For those of you that don't know, this is my brother. Grew up all together in New York, and now he's a graduate student from Loyola, and he's now living out in Baltimore. So, Christopher.
Pleasure is mine to be here, and I am grateful for your invitation.
Right. Thank you again. Before we talk about how bad our Jets are, and before we talk about the wild card with the American League and the National League, we have to talk about a key free agent who is still not being picked up. Today is October 5th, 2016. Shooting guard J.R. Smith is still a free agent. What just came out on ESPN the other day is that he reportedly turned down a 1 year, $11 to $12 million contract. For 1 year, J.R. Smith turned it down. Now, I know there's a rise in the salary cap, which entitles players to make and earn more money. But turning down 1 year, 11 to 12 million, Ryan Fitzpatrick move, kind of ballsy right there.
I couldn't agree more. JR is doing exactly what Ryan Fitzpatrick is doing. He's trying to hold out for the last minute to try and get the highest contract that he's going to get. But how far are the Cavs going to go is the real question.
It's very hard to think of how far they're actually going to go.
Agreed.
Being the fact that the Warriors they not only run the West, they run the world. I don't know if you saw the game last night with Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, and Steph fully clicking. They blew out the Clippers.
They certainly did. I did see that, and those three look like they've been playing for years now.
It's horrible. If I was the Warriors, the obvious move to make yourself more of a super team is to reach out to J.R. Smith. His talent is not going to go unhindered for too much longer. LeBron is not happy about this, and this needs to get done.
I mean, I agree with LeBron. He should be upset. I mean, JR is an asset to that team, especially behind the 3-point line, especially averaging almost 40% behind the 3-point line.
Right. You can tell that J.R. Smith is clearly frustrated with his current contract situation. This is actually pretty funny. This is the longest that we've talked about J.R. Smith. Key figure to the show. But just yesterday, actually, the Cavs needing a backup point guard, they signed former New York Knicks legend Tony Douglas. Completely out of left field, out of nowhere, right?
Correct.
And then 2 hours later, after the signing, J.R. Smith, the Twitter master, the Twitter genius he is, tweets, period. Get it together, Cleveland. He wants to be on your team. And you signed Tony Douglas, who probably was not even going to be signed. Smart move.
I agree. I mean, when's the last time someone heard about Tony Douglas? I mean, nowhere near where J.R. Smith level's at, and I think Cleveland's making I think they're making a mistake here.
Horrible. To end the segment, the Cavs just need to get this deal done. This is now going all over Twitter, and as preseason is starting to pick up, JR's contract situation is going to have to be handled soon. Hopefully this is handled in the next couple of days, but that is it for now in that regard. Switching sports to our beloved New York Jets, we are unfortunately sitting at 1-3 right now. What does this mean for us right now?
Well, to say the least, I think we're in a little bit of trouble to start. And I think it starts with the secondary defense. I think the secondary is starting to realize how tight ends are running all over them.
Right. A huge problem of the Jets' defensive philosophy is that they have their middle linebackers covering the tight ends. And
correct.
For most of the tight ends in the National Football League now, they're just too fast, too athletic, and they can easily outrun any type of tight end.
Absolutely, and we saw that from Travis Kelsey week 3, and we saw that from
Right,
Jimmy Graham week 4.
right. And Jimmy Graham absolutely killed us. Has probably not had a game like that since he's been with Drew Brees in New Orleans.
Correct. Yes, I couldn't agree more. I mean, we've seen the Seahawks play in and out, and we've rarely seen Russell throw to Jimmy Graham, and we saw a major connection there in the New York Jets game.
Right. Obviously, I personally know as a fantasy owner of Jimmy Graham for the past 2 years that Russell Wilson does not like throwing to him. I'm very unhappy that Russell Wilson decided to start throwing against him to our beloved Jets and our roughed up secondary.
Correct.
Darrelle Revis, Revis Island, is it done?
I'm not sure. I think we saw a bad first 2 games from Darrelle Revis. I think we saw some major plays by AJ Green, and that is the main reason why people think Darrelle Revis is done. But we saw a lot less of that in the last 2 games. Darrell looked a little bit better in the last 2 games and did not let up big plays like he did week 1 and week 2.
Right. It's obvious that when a superstar ages, his athletic abilities aren't going to be as sharp as what they used to be. We're clearly seeing that now with Revis. Just hopefully he can get it back together. Another thing to talk about is Eric Decker. Is there a chance that he's done for the year?
It's certainly looking toward that direction. I mean, we've never seen this much doubt from Todd Bowles about Eric Decker.
Yeah, and he's usually a very reliable player. He's always on the field. Again, another Jet I had to draft. Key part of that offense. He doesn't get a ton of receptions for Ryan Fitzpatrick during the games, but he gets all the big plays.
Correct.
And
yep, it's a key contributor on that offense.
You can always rely on him to get open for a 25-yarder, play over the middle. And best part about it is he'll get rocked with a tackle, and he'll stand right up and point the ball to a first down. Best part about Eric Decker.
Absolutely. He's a tough player, and it sucks to see him on the sideline.
Fitztragic, Sixpatrick. Are we going to see some turnaround?
Well, I certainly hope so. Fitz looked like he had a turnaround. The start of the game against the Seahawks,
Mm-hmm.
And then he ended up throwing 3 picks.
He came out very well.
Correct. I think that some of the picks were not his fault. In that Seahawks game, he was definitely more liable for his picks week 3 against Kansas City. But I think he made a good turnaround. I don't think the Jets should start, looking toward the bench just yet.
Yes. That was my next question, actually. That was my follow-up. Is it time for Geno? Is it time for Bryce? Do I dare say, is it time for Hackenberg? I'm going with no. I still think the season is very young, but again,
I agree.
Throwing 6 interceptions in one game for a New York quarterback, or any quarterback for that matter, is unacceptable in the National Football League.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think it was the worst day at the office Ryan Fitzpatrick has had in his career.
Absolutely.
And I think he's on. I don't think the Jets should look toward the bench, at those players just yet.
Right. It's very early in the season. There are only 4 games in. Hopefully they can get the job done this weekend. Switching over sports to the other New York team, the New York Mets have clinched the wild card spot and will play in tonight's game against Madison Bumgarner and the San Francisco Giants. The matchup is a pretty intense one pitching-wise. Noah Syndergaard, right-handed pitcher, is the guy we got chucking for us. And is this the right move?
Absolutely. I don't care who thinks not. Noah Syndergaard is the best pitcher right now the Mets could offer in this.
Right. And even with everyone healthy when the season started, I've always been Syndergaard's our ace, Harvey's our 2 or 3, and then DeGrom, you fill him in with the other. I am very hopeful that Syndergaard can get the job done tonight. He just has to, the biggest problem with not only him, but all Mets starting pitchers, they have a very hard time keeping runners close to the bag and avoiding steals. That's the reason why we're not playing Travis d'Arnaud anymore. Is because Syndergaard and the rest of the Mets. Bleh, excuse me. Syndergaard and the rest of the Mets pitching staff has a very hard time keeping runners close and are very slow to the plate. And with this, it makes the catcher's position a lot harder to do. The catchers are throwing down when the runners are 3/4 of the way there, making it impossible every time.
Absolutely. Yep.
So that's why, in even tonight's game, we're starting with Rene Rivera. And are you fond of that move? Are you okay with Rene Rivera starting a wild card game?
Well, just seeing what Rivera has done so far in the season, I'm going to say yes. I think he's had some key contribute to the Mets offense. I think he's a decent player, and I think he is a good answer for Noah tonight.
Right. It's going to be very interesting to see what the Mets offense can do against the left-handed throwing Madison Bumgarner. Before I talk about the Mets lineup, the starting lineup in general, I want to talk about some key people who I think they left off the wild card roster, or for tonight's game as a whole. I don't know if you know this. I'm sure you do. Terry Collins decided to give James Loney the start at first base. And usually the backup is Lucas Duda when he's healthy. And he hasn't been for most of the season, but he came around towards the end of the year, just a pinch hit, played a few games at first. But Lucas Duda, the power hitter, is left off our wild card roster. Do you agree that he should be left off our roster for tonight's game, and Ty Kelly is the guy replacing him?
Well, I feel like we haven't seen much of Lucas Duda. I think Duda was out most of the season, and I'm not sure if the Mets feel as though he's fully recovered. I think that's a main concern of why he's not on the active roster tonight.
And I'm guessing that's what it has to be. Even though they're going up against a left-handed Bumgarner, and you don't want to start this guy, that's fine. You still want to have this guy on your bench because
I agree.
He can crank home runs, Christopher. He can crank home runs. He goes in those ridiculous streaks where he'll just hit 8 home runs in like 16 games or something, and he'll be the king of New York. And then next week he'll just go 0 for like 24, 16 strikeouts.
Or the next 3 weeks he doesn't even have a walk.
Yeah.
But again, I think the Mets are concerned. Still have some concerns about Duda moving forward. I think that they're just trying to play it safe.
Right. From here on out, are you comfortable with Loney being the guy at first base?
I mean, Loney played first base all year.
Mm-hmm.
I think Loney, I think he's come through. I think he's an average player.
Mm-hmm.
I think he gets the job done at first base. And to be honest with you, I mean, I fully expected this. I think when the Mets had a run of making the playoffs, it's because of the players that were, making the wins happen.
Right.
So we saw Loney play a lot of games. So I feel like this is I think it's a good move on the Mets' part.
And just to recap, James Loney did not start the season off with the Mets. He started off with the Rays or the Padres, I believe. He was in one of the farm systems.
He was in the farm system for the Padres and then got traded.
Right. And the Mets, it was a win-win because Duda had a stress fracture in his back. They needed a veteran replacement because they didn't want to go with Wilmer Flores for the rest of the season. And I think, along with Jose Reyes, Jay Bruce, and TJ Rivera, very key pickup and a huge reason why we are in the playoffs today.
And it's funny that you say Jay Bruce, especially with the start that he had, coming to the New York team. But again, you said that he's a key contributor, and I agree. He's turning it around, and I'm expecting big things from him in the postseason.
Right, and Jay Bruce, to Mark, had a very, very slow start when he was first traded over to New York for Dilson Herrera. When he was traded over to the Mets, though, he was leading the National League in RBIs. So when he was traded to the Mets, you and I were bouncing off the walls with excitement that Sandy Alderson finally gave us another hitter with Cespedes, which is beautiful. So Jay Bruce comes along, and of course he goes into the worst streak of his career. because what else happens in New York? That's the way it's supposed to go.
That's what happens.
These last 2 weeks, though, he's picked it up. He's replaced Conforto back in the starting lineup in right field. Um, Very key that he's turned it on at this point of the season.
Absolutely, I
Mhm.
absolutely agree with you. And like you said, he's a key contributor, like Jose Reyes. I mean, Jose Reyes. I mean,
Ah,
what a snag.
I can speak measures about this guy. He was acquired from the Rockies due to his domestic violence scandal. Um, it's all in the past to him. He searched to get help. He's got help. He came over to the Mets. He played in AAA, Double A, Single A. He worked his way up to the point where he replaced his buddy David Wright at third base. And having
Ironic.
yeah, it's very ironic because the two in 2006, 2007 were homies. They were the boys.
Yep.
They were all we got. We had
Yep.
Jose up one, and we had David right up three, and you know what? We were chilling. We were good.
Yep. As long as we had those two, we were somehow contributing.
Best part about Jose Reyes, when we went to the games at Shea, it'd be his second or third at bat after he's having a killer game, and whole entire crowd is Jose, 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 just going
Yep.
nuts. Like
Yep.
Shea Stadium's electric because of that.
Well, and you know what? I think a big reason why the streak of Jose Reyes is coming back to life is because he's back to where he came from. I think he was a very good player when he started with the New York Mets, and I think he. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think he was a good player while he was with the other teams that he was with. But
Toronto and Colorado.
I think a lot turned around from his career when he left the Mets, and I think he wanted to get back on the correct track. That he wanted to be the team that he started with, and now you could see it really emerge out of him.
Right, and you see it like all over. You see it on and off the field. His Snapchat, if he's not like Snapchatting the field, if he's not Snapchatting the clubhouse, he's at his house Snapchatting like with people just coming over for breakfast, hanging out. And I feel like that speaks volumes about a player, just doing more than going to the clubhouse every day, doing your job, hitting a home run or two, and then leaving. Um, One last part about the Mets. Have you seen all the Mets players dye their hair blonde?
Yes.
Did you see Cespedes? They
Yeah.
got they got him today. They got him
Yep.
today. Very nice.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
I don't know if you also heard Conforto. He came out and said that if the Mets win tonight's game, that tomorrow he will be in the barbershop dyeing his hair. Blondie season. Blondie season. That recaps the NL wildcard game for tonight. That game is coming up actually in an hour. Syndergaard and the Mets will face off against Bumgarner and the Giants again. Tune in. That will be a great watch. Let's go Mets. To talk about the other side of the spectrum, we have to talk about last night's game with Baltimore and Toronto. You're a Baltimore native now, and as you know, going around the city and the Inner Harbor, the loss hurts. Um,
Oh, yeah, it's to say that it hurts is a soft word to say for Orioles fans. They had a tough one last night, especially facing a tough crowd in Toronto. I think we even saw that with the beer mess.
oh, bro, horrible. That is, it's so not classy.
Embarrassing for Toronto.
It's embarrassing for Toronto because it doesn't represent who they are as a franchise. And it kind of stinks. Toronto came out with a statement today saying that this guy is literally never allowed in the stadium. Again, rightfully so. But it's a playoff game. It's a wild card game. If that
Absolutely.
actually hit the ball or the player, then what happens?
Absolutely. I mean, I agree. I mean, if this is something that happens in play, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen.
Mhm.
But I mean, when I started watching that game last night, I mean, the atmosphere in Toronto was absolutely insane.
Electric. And even the broadcast crew. The broadcast crew said it. They couldn't even hear because it was so electric in there.
You could barely hear the broadcast crew in that game because of how noisy and electric it was. But just that beer spell, and I mean that just gives Toronto a bad look there.
I think the worst part of it all, which even gives Toronto even worse of a look, I'm sorry, Blue Jays fans, is that when Buck Showalter, the manager of the Orioles, came out to say what the heck's going on with beer cans being thrown at my left fielder, the crowd started booing him.
Oh yeah, oh I know, and it was not. And again, I think it just contributes to the not a good look from Toronto fans.
Right. Just horrible all around. Again, it's just only some of the people. But a main part of this game last night, it was 2-2 riding all along. Um, runs were scored earlier on in the innings, or earlier on in the game, excuse me. Trumbo hit a 2-run homer for Baltimore. Absolute nuke. The guy's unbelievable, dude.
He led the league in home runs. I mean, to say the least, he was a powerhouse this
Completely
year.
out of nowhere. So, of course, it's the seventh or eighth inning, and the broadcast team starts talking about bullpen moves and when it's time to bring in star closer for Baltimore, Zach Britton. For those of you who don't know who are listening to the show, Zach Britton is a left-handed pitcher for the Orioles. Had a 0.56 ERA.
Correct. He had as long as that's below a 1.00 ERA, he is a phenomenal pitcher. And I to say the least, I was shocked that they didn't throw him in at the end of the game.
Right, and that comes to the next part. So a save situation was not in check at the moment
Correct.
for them. So Buck Showalter decides, let me save this guy for a couple more innings until I have a chance for a save opportunity. And it came to a point where social media was starting to question Showalter's antics and tactics and the idea of why you're not putting in the best closer in baseball. Before I want to hear your opinion, I just want to say this um, before just everything. Um, in the bottom of the 11th inning, when the game was won by Toronto on a walk-off nuke by Edwin Encarnacion, the inning led off with three of their star hitters, being Josh Donaldson, Joey Batista,
Correct.
and then Edwin Encarnacion.
Correct.
So at some point here, you have to play the matchup, and you have to think, okay, Encarnacion, Batista, and Donaldson. Those are three big hitters in the opposing lineup. Those are three right-handed hitters. Okay?
Correct.
Is it wrong that Buck Showalter did not bring in a left-handed stud to face them?
I mean, to me, it seems like a no-brainer to get him in there, especially with three powerhouse hitters like that. I mean, I think a lot of the O's fans, including myself, had question marks all over the place.
Right. Many were confused when it was said and done why Showalter decided to roll with Ubaldo Jimenez instead of Zach Britton, which is now it's actually being laughed about today. But personally speaking, maybe Ubaldo wasn't the right guy for the situation, which is fine. Obviously, it didn't pan out because the guy let up 3 straight hits, but it's a righty-on-righty matchup. And for those of you who don't know the baseball world, a righty-on-righty matchup is way more favorable for the defense than a left-handed pitcher pitching to a right-handed batter, or a left-handed pitcher pitching to a right, vice versa. You know what I mean?
Correct.
It's very hard. So now the city of Baltimore, the city that you're in, the Inner Harbor, is the morning city is waking up to, this morning saying, "What if? What if Buck Showalter decides to call the bullpen? What if he decides to roll the dice and put the lefty in against the righty? What if we decided to put in the best closer in baseball against some of the best hitters in baseball?" Very, very tough situation for the manager, Buck Showalter. Very tough situation, but a very successful season for the team. Nothing to be taken away from them.
Absolutely.
Before we wrap it up and talk about our fantasy studs of last week, you've been in the Baltimore area for 4 or 5 years now. You've spent some time around the Inner Harbor. You've seen the city, and you've been to Camden Yards. We've been there plenty of times. what is it like for you as, I guess, a resident of Baltimore? Like, what's the atmosphere of Camden Yards? What's the atmosphere of the people around you there? It's electric there. It's something that has to be talked about.
It's I mean, it's a great thing to bring up. Actually, I mean, the city is electric when it comes to sports. I mean, you see it every single game. I mean, I drive. I mean, I live in the Inner Harbor, and I mean, I drive through Camden Yards every day, and you see. I mean, you see these fans, and they are electric to say the least. It's a whole different atmosphere compared to other cities. It's definitely a city of their own to call. And it's unbelievable how sports faithful the city of Baltimore really is.
Right, and not even baseball speaking.
And not that, I mean, it's more. I mean, you see it more
Baltimore
from
Ravens.
the Baltimore Ravens than you'll see it out of anywhere. To be honest.
Right, and that's one of the places I need to be, watching a Ravens game. But you were there, unfortunately, when they smacked around the Jets. How was that?
Unfortunate. The New York Jets were terrible that game. Gino had three interceptions. It was cold, and Baltimore smacked us.
Right. Yeah, that was tough. You and Dad went to that one.
Yep.
Very good seats, though.
Oh yeah, right in the end zone.
Oh, I'm glad. Very glad to hear that. Thanks a lot, Dad. To wrap it up, we have to talk about the fantasy stars of Week 4, and let's talk about Julio Jones and the Falcons. Matt Ryan.
Yeah, we could start about Matt Ryan. I mean, Matt Ryan had a franchise record of 503 passing yards, and over 300 of them were to his favorite target, Julio Jones. It was incredible to watch, and an incredible game by both players.
It was a blessing to see as a fantasy owner because it has not happened all year. It's why I drafted him 6th overall in your league. And he finally came around. You know who else finally came around is Raiders wide receiver Michael Crabtree, who I also have in this league, who you have in another league. But, of course, me being the genius, was on my bench. 3 touchdowns. Derek Carr.
I'm gonna say something about Michael Crabtree. Michael Crabtree has been fired to say the least. I mean, he's starting to turn into a wide receiver one.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Him and I would say now even Mike Wallace.
Yeah, Mike Wallace is on the same level. They're both turning into solid. I mean, no doubt about it. Wide receiver twos start to get high end wide receiver one looks.
They're both reemerging as players, and it's very good to see as a football viewer. I think that is all for today. Christopher, out of Baltimore, thank you again for joining me. It was a pleasure having you on the show to talk sports. And hey, let's go Mets. We need a win tonight.
Let's go Mets. Let's get it done.
All right, thanks again. I'll see you later.
All right, I'll see you later.